Dr. Professor Peter Baofu, as a philosopher and a thinker and scholar, it is more interesting to understand that the world is moving to the unknown. You, as a doctor and professor, what can you say about the aliens in connection with the growing world technology?
That is a very interesting question, because one of the major theories that I have proposed, I have written more than 148 books and 150 by next week. I have proposed more than 115 theories. One of them is what I call post-humanity, in which I propose that the human race, like you and me, will not last. It will be replaced gradually by what I call post-humans. There will be some new life forms, races, and different intelligent objects or entities that we had never known before. And this, I think, is very important for us to recognize. Unfortunately, in our time, this has not yet been recognized per se. It's still very, very unpopular. So, and that is very important for us to understand the so-called aliens that you have in mind, how this is going to impact on technology. And of course, we will talk more about this.
Thank you. So your theory and thinking is that the human race will be replaced by the so-called, what is it?
There are many different forms. I propose more than probably 10 different forms, like what I call the hyperspatial consciousness, floating consciousness, unfolding unconsciousness, nano agents, many other versions. There's not one version of different life forms which will emerge in the future. Some of the things is something that a lot of people have been talking about nowadays, like cyborgs or humanoids or robots and all that. Yeah, but that is more or less the beginning. In the longer term, as civilization progresses further and further into the distant future, more and more life forms is going to emerge over time, not on Earth, but in outer space. Not even in this universe. It might even be in another universe, in different universes. So, and that is very important for the understanding of aliens, and that is also a very important topic, because the notion of aliens has been quite popular in human civilization and history, but it has been even more so in modern times. But it has been so for quite some time, but it has been more so in modern times, especially with the advance of technology, which allows us to search for different messages in outer space. A good example, let's say, is the radio telescope, or the satellite, or the extraterrestrial probes. In fact, one of the most scientific ones that we have so far is SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. But so far we have not yet discovered any scientific confirmation yet. But there's a lot of speculation in science fiction, in popular culture, in films, in Hollywood movies, and all that. Those are for entertainment and public education.
Doctor, can we now say that the technology we have today has nothing to do with the celestial beings?
No, we cannot say that. I think that's too premature to talk like that, because number one, we don't even know if they exist, the extraterrestrial life forms. And number two, we don't even know what kind of technologies that they have. They may be more advanced than we do. Maybe some of them are less advanced they do, or maybe they do not even exist. In fact, in the literature, there are competing positions. One of them, for example, is the theory, the hypothesis, which says that Earth is very exceptional, very rare. There will not be another kind of civilization like that. A good example is the rare Earth hypothesis. The opposing one is what some people call the cosmic pluralism, which is to argue just the opposite, that no, we are not so exceptional. There are many other life forms in the universe, to accept that we have not yet discovered them. One major reason for that is because the distance between the Earth in the solar system and maybe another potential planet elsewhere in another galaxy or in the other clusters of galaxies are so vast the distance. Even if they have the technology to send messages to us, by the time we receive a message, that message was already like million years ago. I mean, or even more or less, depending where that planet was at that time. So there are a lot of uncertain questions that we do not know yet. There are a lot of speculations. No, we cannot answer the question right now. So the answer is we do not know. We have to admit that we do not know. There are some questions that we can answer. Some other questions we cannot answer. So when we cannot answer because we lack information, we have to say that we lack information. But of course, this does not prevent many people to speculate. We have so many conspiracy theories, UFOs, hypotheses, theories and all that in human history. Themes, Hollywood themes, and many other themes have been talking about this science fiction, literature, novels, stories.
So, Doctor, you basically say you up to now confirm that there's no fundamental, strong reason to believe in UFO's existence, right?
I cannot say that we don't have a strong belief, but I do think that there are some good reasons for us to keep searching. SETI, the one that I just mentioned to you, the scientific project like the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, so far we have not discovered anything. Some years ago, people talk about we discovered some kind of microbes on Mars, and they are some kind of life forms from another planet somewhere in outer space. But the more we investigated that, the more we discovered that no, it was not quite what people said at that time. But I do not rule out once and for all that no, give up, that is wasting time. But that is not as important question in the longer term. In my publication, I said I have also written books on religion, on theology, on thanatology, on outer space, on nanotechnology, on so many other topics. I think the more important point is to understand two things which are also very important over here. One is that why are people interested in that kind of question? Why are people interested in aliens? I think that's an important question. And I think that that's important because in human history, the more civilized, the more technological advanced groups often come and colonize and conquer, in some cases exterminate or kill the less advanced ones. You can talk about, let's say, the almost extermination of native Indians by the white settlers in America, because I'm from the US. Or you can talk about the European colonialization of Africa. In that period, you have black slavery or rape, massacre, exploitation. You can talk about the European colonization of Latin America and all that. You can talk about the Russian expansion from a tiny space in Eurasia now to a vast area. Almost any advanced civilization over time tend to conquer the lesser ones. So we think that, well, if we did that to each other, imagine somewhere in outer space, if there are some civilizations which are more advanced than they do, maybe they will behave what we have done over here. Now, I think that it would be too far to speculate like that because we have no evidence to think like that. Why? Because civilization may be very different from each other. Just because we are so brutal and violent doesn't mean that everyone else in the entire universe should behave like us. I think that's a human-centric prejudice, but we cannot rule out altogether. But that fear is there. I think that's one thing. But another thing which is even more important in the longer term, I'm not that concerned, number one, with question number one. I'm also not concerned with the second one, which I think is also important, but in a different form. I think that we need to transcend that debate between, let's say, the rare Earth hypothesis and the cosmic pluralism. We can try to understand what can be transcended such that in the future, human civilization, as we understand it, will be replaced by post-humans one. Whether we interact with other aliens or they do not interact with us, or whether we can influence them, or whether they can influence us, or whether they will eliminate us, or whether maybe we can also eliminate them too. Maybe we are much more advanced than they are. Whichever way, my prediction and my proposal in my publication is that either way that you go, there will be more advanced civilizations and life forms in the universe. In fact, not just in this universe, in multiverse, in different universes altogether. I think that's a more important question to ask then the question about all these aliens, they are going to bite you or kill you or suck your blood or eat you or something like that, it's just for entertainment.
Okay, very good. So then what can you say 100 years from now? What do you see? If, I know you won't be alive, but 100 years to come from now, what do you see in this world we live?
Well, I have written a lot of books about the future, so I should not be alive by then, of course, but future humans and future post-humans, they will live much longer. Not just 100 years or more. In fact, in one of the emergent life forms that I am predicting is that many of them, it depends on which period of time that you are referring to. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 1 million years from now, 1 trillion years from now. So it depends on how far you go. But in different periods in my publications, because so far I have proposed more than 115 visions, I propose quite a lot of different visions about what their future life forms are going to be. Not just one form, many different forms, many. But into most distant future, that I even propose what I call the floating consciousness.
Floating consciousness.
That is a consciousness in which they will be conquer a vast distance in space and time, such that they will more or less colonize all of them, but they will be in a life form which is totally different from anything that we know before. But there are also many things that are very, very different from us. So there's another example. 100 years from now, I think that we will discover more and more our civilization and outer planets. But I'm not sure that we are going to say 100 years from now that, oh, now we can answer the question for sure that the aliens now are here, they are conquering us and all that. Maybe it's too short. Remember, when you think about the universe, think more in terms of time. 100 years is just a very small. To us humans on Earth, yes, it's a long history. You will die out by then, I will die out by that. But in terms of the universe, think more in terms of the number, not in terms of 100. Put a few more zeros to that.
Can you talk more about post-human in the coming world?
Yes, I propose a lot of them. In fact, almost all of my books, 148 so far, and 150 in a few weeks. So by the end of this year, 150. I propose a lot of different visions. I'm the founding father, not just on one vision, like Karl Marx about class struggle, Sigmund Freud about psychoanalysis, Jesus Christ about Christianity, Buddha about Buddhism. I'm the founding father of 115 different visions, and many of them are different from each other. For example, post-capitalism, post-democracy is something that I have investigated, and I predict that capitalism and democracy, as we understand them now, will not last, will not survive. It will be replaced by what I call new political and economic system. I call them post-democracy and post-capitalism. Even then, there will not be one version of post-capitalism, not one version of post-democracy, but many different versions. I propose more than 5 or 6 different versions, but many more to come. The stuff about civilization, the stuff about outer space, for example, migration, sexuality, creative thinking, cosmologies, different space and time. In the future, in the farther in the future, the human life forms and the post-human life forms can even create some new space and time. Something that we had never done before, because in a way we are very primitive. I just want to mention this to you. In America now, especially at the end of the Cold War, people used to think we are at the end of history, in the sense that what we are progressing so far, especially in relation to market capitalism and liberal democracy, they are the highest achievements of human history. This is just the post-Cold War ideology in America. A lot of Americans believe in them, they make them feel so good, that America is the highest point. No, we are not the end of it. We are not the end of human history. We're only the beginning. There are more ideas to come, and I have proposed more than 115 visions so far. And many of them are so fundamental as to challenge the very foundation of human civilization in all fields of knowledge as we understand them. Remember, the 150 books so far, all of them are not just on one field, or political science, economics. I talk about all of them. In mathematics, in cosmology, in biology, in chemistry, in mathematics, in linguistics, in communication study, in sociology, economics and political science, and so on and so forth. So I predict in all of them, what they are going to be like. And therefore, to answer your question, the post-human future that you just mentioned to me, you have to read all of this 150 pages, not just one. I just give you some example to lay down an interesting conversation for us to continue about aliens and how it affects technology use.
As you understand, for the viewers, it's a little bit hard for our viewers to go through these books. Can you a bit make a summary on post-human? Just a summary. If you are in a conversation and you are required to speak 100 words of post-human, what would you say?
Okay. Let me summarize that in a brief executive summary, just in a few sentences, so that you don't need to read all the books. I think that the human race, as we understand it so far, will not survive. It will be replaced by post-humans in the future. There are many different forms of post-humans. Now, what is going to happen at that time? It will go through gradually, but sometimes even in a very abrupt way. But in all domains, it's going to affect culture. It's going to affect society. It's going to affect nature. It's going to affect the mind. So in all categories, and each of them are subdivided into further categories. For example, in culture, you can talk about religion, you can talk about language, you can talk about philosophy, you can talk about hermeneutics, you can talk about the arts and entertainment, you can talk about sports, you can talk about history. I classify them and I predict in each field of knowledge what those are going to be. In society, you can talk about economics, political science, sociology, communication studies, and all of that in each of them. In nature, I classify further, I talk about physics, chemistry, biology, earth sciences, engineering, and all that. In foremost, in relation to the mind, we can talk about, let's say, creative thinking, consciousness, unconsciousness, and so forth. So each field, each category, I subdivide them further and try to show you point by point, case by case, field by field, what the post-humans are going to be like. That is a summary. Then, of course, to elaborate them, it will take weeks presentation to talk about them.
So thank you so much for today, Doctor. And we're looking to have another discussion again on another subject that pleases you. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.